10 things you should do every morning. Stoic morning routine.
Did you know that nearly 90% of the things we worry about never actually happen? That's not just a feel-good statistic. It's an insight Marcus Aurelius himself seemed to understand centuries ago when he reminded himself, "Today, I escaped anxiety." Or no, I discarded it because it was within me, in my own perceptions, not outside. Imagine if you started each morning with that same clarity, that your peace, your strength, your happiness were never out there in the world, but always within your grasp. Now, before we dive deep, let me make this personal. I remember a season in my life when mornings were my enemy. The alarm clock felt like a battle cry from the universe, dragging me into days I wasn't ready to face. I'd grab my phone, scroll through emails and notifications before I was even out of bed, and within minutes I felt behind. Have you ever experienced that? That sense that life is already controlling you before you've had a chance to take a single breath? That was me, until I stumbled across the writings of the Stoics. Their wisdom transformed my mornings from chaotic and draining into something I now protect like sacred ground. And today, I want to show you how you can do the same. This isn't just a list of 10 things successful people do. This is about something far deeper, building a Stoic morning routine that anchors you in resilience, clarity, and purpose. Think of it as a launch pad, a ritual that doesn't just prepare you for the day, but shapes who you are becoming. The Stoics knew that small, consistent actions, what you and I choose to do each morning, are the bricks we lay in the construction of our lives. So here's what we're going to do together. I'm going to walk you through 10 Stoic-inspired practices for your mornings. Not abstract philosophy, but practical habits rooted in timeless wisdom. Each one connects back to Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, or Epictetus, and each one has been adapted for the world you and I live in today, full of noise, distraction, and stress. Along the way, I'll share stories, examples, and even modern psychology that confirms what the Stoics taught all along. But before we get into the first practice, let's pause for a moment. Why mornings? Why not afternoons or evenings? Here's the truth. Mornings set the tone. The very first actions you take ripple outward into every decision, every challenge, every interaction. Think of it like compound interest. The way you invest in the first hour of your day multiplies throughout the next 16. Start reactive, and you'll spend the whole day playing catch-up. Start intentional, and suddenly even the storms of life feel easier to navigate. And here's something powerful. The Stoics didn't see mornings as just another part of the day. They saw them as a daily rebirth. Marcus Aurelius begins his meditations with reminders to himself each morning who he is, what kind of world he's living in, and how he wants to show up.
He literally wrote pep talks to himself to start the day with virtue. If the most powerful man in the world needed to do that, how much more do we? So let's begin with the first practice. I'll give you the principle, the story, the Stoic wisdom behind it, and then the practical steps you can start tomorrow morning. And if you're finding this valuable so far, I want to invite you, stick with me to the end, because later in this series, I'll reveal one Stoic habit that completely rewired the way I see my mornings. That one shift alone made everything else fall into place. Practice 1. Begin with your mind, not your phone. Here's the trap most of us fall into. We wake up, and the first thing we reach for is our phone. Before we even know what day it is, we're already reacting to texts, emails, headlines, and social media. It's like inviting the whole world into your bedroom before you've even brushed your teeth. Seneca once wrote, "You must lay down for yourself what you want. It will never be what the crowd likes." In other words, if you don't claim your mind first thing in the morning, the world will claim it for you. So here's the Stoic shift. Instead of beginning with your phone, begin with your own thoughts. Before Marcus Aurelius faced the Senate, the generals, the endless demands of an empire, he sat down with himself and wrote in his journal. He set his intentions. He reminded himself of his values. He anchored himself before stepping into the storm. What would that look like for you? It could be as simple as keeping your phone in another room overnight. Use a physical alarm clock. When you wake up, take 5 minutes just to breathe, stretch, and remind yourself, today I choose what I can control. Today I will not be ruled by anger, fear, or distraction. You don't have to write a philosophical treatise, but jotting down one line in a notebook, one guiding thought for the day, can completely shift your mental state. And here's what modern psychology tells us. People who avoid screens for the first 30 minutes of their day report higher focus, lower stress, and more consistent energy. It's not magic, it's biology. You're giving your brain space to wake up rather than drowning it in dopamine hits from endless notifications. So tomorrow morning, try this. Instead of grabbing your phone, grab your journal or simply sit in silence. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be today? That one question has the power to shape every decision you'll face. But here's the twist, because I promised you I'd keep this engaging. You might be thinking, that sounds great, but what about discipline? What if I just don't feel like it? And that brings us to our second practice, one the Stoics mastered: consistency over comfort. Next, I'll reveal how the simple act of waking up at the same time each morning, no matter how tempting that snooze button looks, can transform not just your mornings, but your entire life.
So stay with me, because this next Stoic habit is one that changed my mornings forever. Practice 2. Consistency over comfort. Let me ask you something. How many times has your alarm gone off, and instead of getting up, you've whispered to yourself, just 5 more minutes? And then 5 minutes becomes 15, 15 becomes 30, and suddenly you're rushing through your morning like you're already behind on life. Sound familiar? That's not just about waking up late. It's about letting comfort rule your choices. And the Stoics would say that's a dangerous path. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, at dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? Do you feel that weight? For him, it wasn't about dragging himself out of bed because he had to. It was about remembering his duty, his role, his purpose, his responsibility to live with virtue. Here's the truth. Consistency is harder than comfort, but it's infinitely more rewarding. When you decide to wake up at the same time every day, even when you don't feel like it, you're telling your mind and body, I'm in control here, not my impulses. And that's the essence of Stoicism, mastery over self. I'll be real with you. When I first tried this, it was brutal. I'd set my alarm for 6 a.m., and when it rang, my brain would invent the most creative excuses. You worked hard yesterday. You deserve rest. It's too cold. It's too dark. Tomorrow will be easier. That inner voice of comfort, it's seductive, but it's also a liar. Because every time I gave in, I reinforced weakness. Every time I resisted, I reinforced strength. Think of it this way. Your mornings are a battlefield, not with the world, but with yourself. And each time you choose to rise when you said you would, you've already won the first battle of the day. You've already told life, I'm ready. That small act of consistency builds a chain of victories that compounds into something much bigger than just waking up early. Now let's connect this with modern science. Research shows that consistent wake-up times regulate your circadian rhythm, the internal clock that governs energy, mood, and focus. People who wake up at irregular times are more prone to anxiety, sluggishness, and decision fatigue. But those who rise consistently report sharper focus, more stable energy, and even better emotional resilience. Isn't that exactly what the Stoics wanted? Stability of mind, freedom from being tossed around by whims and moods. But here's where the Stoics add a twist. It's not about being rigid for the sake of rigidity. It's about training your will.
And when you practice discipline in something small, you'll have it ready when the big tests come. The unexpected crisis, the harsh criticism, the temptation to lash out in anger. Let me give you an example. A close friend of mine was going through a messy divorce. He told me the hardest part wasn't the arguments or the legal battles. It was waking up every morning feeling defeated before the day began. He decided, almost out of desperation, to wake up at 5:30 every morning no matter what. He'd get out of bed, make his coffee, and sit quietly with a book or journal. That one consistent act gave him an anchor. Over time, he told me, it became the thing that reminded him he was still in control, even when everything else felt like chaos. That's the power of consistency over comfort. So, how do you build this into your life? Let me give you 3 simple steps. Step 1. Set your intention the night before. Don't just rely on morning motivation. It won't be there. Write down, "I will wake up at 6:30," and remind yourself why it matters. Is it for quiet time, for focus, for growth? Anchor it to something bigger than just getting up. Step 2. Shape your environment. Put your phone or alarm clock across the room so you have to get up to turn it off. Lay out your clothes the night before. These small tweaks remove excuses and make rising easier. Step 3. Expect resistance. Don't be shocked when your brain screams, "Stay in bed." That's normal. The Stoics taught us not to be surprised by obstacles. They're part of the process. The trick is to rise anyway, and when you do, you'll feel a quiet pride that stays with you all day. But let me be clear, consistency doesn't mean perfection. There will be mornings you miss. Marcus Aurelius himself admitted his own weakness. The key is what you do next. Do you spiral into guilt? Or do you start fresh the next morning, without self-condemnation? Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Mastery includes patience and forgiveness with your own flaws. You missed a morning? Fine. The next one is your chance to prove your strength. And here's the real beauty. When you consistently win that first battle, it bleeds into the rest of your day. Suddenly, you're not skipping the workout because you already proved to yourself that you can do hard things. You're not losing your cool in traffic because you already practiced mastery over impulses. You're not procrastinating on that hard project because you've trained yourself to face discomfort head-on. This is what the Stoics meant when they said virtue is a habit. It's not a single act of heroism. It's thousands of small choices repeated daily. And waking up consistently is one of the simplest, most powerful places to start. So tomorrow, when your alarm goes off, don't negotiate. Don't bargain. Rise. Not because it's easy, but because it's who you want to become. Every morning, you choose consistency over comfort. You're chiseling your character into something unshakable. Now let me plant a seed for what's next. Once you've built the habit of consistent rising, the next question is, what do you do with that extra time? Because waking up early is only powerful if you fill that space with intention. And that leads us straight into practice 3, the power of small wins. In the next section, I'll show you how something as simple as making your bed or journaling for 5 minutes can create unstoppable momentum for your entire day. These small victories aren't trivial. They're the training ground for the kind of resilience and calm the Stoics mastered. So stick with me, because this next part may completely change the way you see your mornings. Practice 3. The power of small wins. Let's be honest, most of us overcomplicate our mornings. We think we need a 2-hour routine like some elite athlete or billionaire entrepreneur. Meditation, journaling, cold showers, workouts, reading, gratitude lists, visualizations, all before breakfast. And then what happens? We get overwhelmed. We fail to do half of it, and then we beat ourselves up. The Stoics had a different approach. They believed that greatness wasn't built in giant leaps, but in small, deliberate steps. Epictetus said it best: "No great thing is created suddenly." What he meant is this: character, resilience, peace of mind, they're not built by doing everything at once. They're built by simple daily actions repeated with intention. And that applies to your mornings more than anywhere else. So here's the principle. Instead of trying to create a perfect morning routine, focus on small wins. The first few actions you take each morning should be simple, doable, and designed to create momentum. Think of it like this. When you push a heavy flywheel, the first shove is the hardest. But once it starts moving, each push gets easier, and eventually the momentum carries itself. Small wins in the morning are those first shoves. They don't have to be massive. They just have to move you forward. Let me share a story. A man named Admiral William McRaven gave a famous speech about making your bed. He said, "If you want to change the world, start off by making your bed." Now, to some people, that sounds almost silly. How does making your bed matter in the grand scheme of things? But his reasoning was profound. It's a small act of discipline. It sets the tone. You've already achieved something before you've even left your room. That small victory makes it easier to win the next and the next. The Stoics would have loved that. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that small actions done well create a life of virtue. He didn't talk about changing the world in grand speeches. He talked about showing up each day and doing the next right thing.
So, something as ordinary as making your bed, tidying your desk, or drinking a glass of water as soon as you wake up can become your first Stoic victory of the day. Now, let's connect this to modern psychology. Research shows that small wins release dopamine, the brain's motivation chemical. That's why ticking off a box on your to-do list feels satisfying. You're training your brain to associate action with reward. And here's the magic. Dopamine doesn't just make you feel good, it also drives you to do the next task. So, if you start your day with something easy but intentional, you literally prime your brain for momentum. What does that look like practically? Here are a few examples of Stoic-inspired small wins. Make your bed. Simple, fast, and symbolic. It says, "I start my day with order." Drink a glass of water. Seneca often reminded himself of the value of simplicity. This is as simple as it gets, and your body will thank you. Journal a single line. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself every morning, "You don't need a page, just one sentence of intention. Today, I will respond with patience." That's enough. Take 3 deep breaths. Epictetus taught that our mind is within our control. A few intentional breaths anchor you before the world rushes in. Step outside for 60 seconds. Feel the air. See the sky. Connect with the moment. The Stoics loved nature. It reminded them of perspective. You don't need all of these. Pick 1 or 2. The point is not quantity, it's quality. And here's the thing. Small wins are not trivial. They're training. If you can master these small acts of discipline, you're training yourself for bigger challenges. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." He's saying, stop theorizing, start practicing, even in the smallest of ways. Let me give you another modern example.
I worked with a client once who was struggling with anxiety. Every morning, she'd wake up already tense, already worrying about her day. I suggested one small win. Write down 3 things she was grateful for before leaving her room. At first, she resisted. She wanted something bigger, more powerful. But after a few weeks, she realized that simple act shifted her mood. It reframed her mornings. It gave her a small but significant win that made the rest of her day lighter. That's the power of small wins. Now, let's integrate a Stoic practice directly. Negative visualization. What if tomorrow you woke up and your coffee machine was broken, your commute was delayed, or you spilled something on your shirt? If you've already practiced gratitude for small wins, these setbacks won't derail you. You'll shrug, adapt, and move on, because you've trained yourself to anchor in what you can control, not what you can't. So here's your challenge. Tomorrow morning, choose one small win. Just one. Maybe it's making your bed. Maybe it's writing one line. Maybe it's stretching for 60 seconds. Whatever it is, commit to it.
Do it consistently for 7 days. Don't overthink it. Don't complicate it. Just repeat it. And notice what happens. Notice how your mornings feel more grounded. Notice how your mindset feels less chaotic. That's Stoicism in action, anchoring yourself in the controllable, building momentum through small acts, and letting those acts ripple into your entire life. But here's the twist, because I promised to keep you leaning in. Small wins are powerful, but what you do immediately after them matters even more. You've claimed control, you've created order. Now the question is, how do you direct that energy? And that leads us to practice 4, protect the first hour. The Stoics knew that if you allowed distraction to own the beginning of your day, the rest of the day will slip through your fingers. In the next section, we'll talk about why guarding the first hour of your morning is the single most valuable investment you can make in your peace, productivity, and resilience. So don't miss this, because if there's one practice that separates the Stoic way from the world's noise, it's this one. Practice 4, protect the first hour. Let me start with a simple but uncomfortable question. Who owns the first hour of your day? You or everyone else? Think about it. If you roll over, grab your phone, and dive straight into emails, news, or social media, you've already surrendered. Before your feet even hit the floor, you've allowed other people's agendas, opinions, and emergencies to dictate your mood and your mindset. And here's the hard truth. If the world owns your first hour, it will own the rest of your day. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that his mind was his most valuable possession and that he needed to protect it from corruption and distraction. He wrote, "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say or think or do, only what you do." That's the spirit of protecting your mornings. It's about claiming your inner world before the outer world floods in. I remember when I used to start my day by checking the news. Within minutes, I was angry about politics, stressed about the economy, and worried about things totally outside of my control. By the time I finished my coffee, my mood was already hijacked. And when your first hour is poisoned, it bleeds into everything else. You snap at your kids, you carry tension into meetings, you can't focus on what actually matters because you're already in a reactive state. Ever felt that? It's exhausting. So here's the Stoic practice. Protect your first hour like it's sacred. Think of it as your temple, your fortress, your training ground. In that first hour, you don't let the outside world in. Instead, you focus on what you can control: your thoughts, your breath, your body, your purpose. Now, this doesn't mean you need to follow some rigid checklist.
It's not about cramming meditation, journaling, affirmations, and a workout into 60 minutes just to say you did it. It's about intention. What matters is that your first hour is directed by you, not stolen by others. Here are some Stoic-inspired ways to fill that hour. Read something grounding. Marcus began his days by writing in his journal, reminding himself of Stoic principles. You can do the same by reading a few pages from a book that inspires you. Not a scroll through TikTok, but something that sharpens your mind. Journal for clarity. Write down one thought, one value, one intention. Today, I will focus on patience. That's enough. It doesn't have to be poetic. It just has to be real. Move your body. The Stoics valued physical resilience as much as mental resilience. A short workout, a walk outside, even stretching. These remind you that your body is your ally in virtue. Sit in silence. Seneca wrote, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." Sometimes the best way to learn is simply to sit, breathe, and notice. Silence is a teacher. The point isn't what exact practice you choose. The point is that you choose, that your first hour reflects your values, not the noise of the world. Now, let's layer in some modern science. Researchers talk about the attentional residue effect. When you jump between tasks, like reading emails, scrolling, then trying to focus, you leave a residue of distraction in your mind. Your brain gets stuck on the last thing it saw, even as you try to move on. That's why starting with social media or news can sabotage your whole day. Protecting your first hour prevents attentional residue. It gives you a clean slate. Here's a practical way to test this. Tomorrow, when you wake up, don't touch your phone for the first 60 minutes. Instead, do one grounding activity. At the end of that hour, notice how you feel. Notice the calm. Notice the clarity. Then compare it to how you feel on a day when you immediately open your phone. The difference is dramatic. And here's the deeper Stoic layer. Protecting your first hour is really about protecting your judgments. Epictetus said, "It's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things." If you begin the day flooded with headlines, gossip, and notifications, you're handing your power of judgment over to the world. But if you begin with reflection, intention, and discipline, you're reclaiming that power. You're saying, "I will decide how I see today. I will decide what matters." Let me give you an example. A CEO I once worked with had a simple rule. The first hour of his day was untouchable. No phone, no meetings, no email. He spent it journaling, reading, and walking. People told him it was impossible with his responsibilities. But he insisted. He said, "If I don't control my first hour, I can't control the rest. And if I can't control myself, how can I lead anyone else?" That's Stoicism in practice. But here's where it gets interesting.
Protecting the first hour doesn't just improve your mornings, it transforms your evenings too. Because once you experience the power of beginning calmly and intentionally, you start to ask, how can I set myself up tonight to protect tomorrow morning? Suddenly, you care more about what time you go to bed. You care more about your evening habits. And just like that, your entire rhythm of life begins to shift. So, let me challenge you. For the next week, protect your first hour. Treat it like your training ground for resilience. No one else has the right to invade it unless you let them. And each day you keep that boundary, you'll feel stronger, calmer, and more in control. And here's the curiosity gap for what's coming next. Once you've protected that first hour, what do you do with it? How do you fill it with practices that not only keep you calm, but actively sharpen your mind for the battles of the day? That's where the Stoics give us another powerful tool, the practice of reflection and journaling. In the next part, I'll show you how Marcus Aurelius used his journal as both a shield and a sword, protecting his mind from chaos while sharpening his character. And I'll show you exactly how you can use that same practice to turn your mornings into a time of self-mastery. So, stick with me, because if there's one Stoic habit that can completely transform your mornings and your entire mindset, it's this one. Practice 5. Reflection and journaling. If you could sit down with the most powerful man in the world, the Emperor of Rome, and peek into his morning routine, what would you find? You might expect grand councils, soldiers lined up, political strategy meetings. But Marcus Aurelius began his mornings with a journal. Not a glossy leather-bound book filled with elegant prose. No, it was messy, personal, often repetitive. He wasn't writing for the public, he was writing for himself. His meditations were nothing more than a journal of reminders. Today you will meet with the arrogant, the selfish, the deceitful. Don't be surprised, don't be shaken. Think about that. Before facing the weight of an empire, Marcus grounded himself with words. He was reminding his mind of what mattered most: virtue, patience, perspective. That's the heart of Stoic journaling. It's not about looking poetic, it's about preparing yourself for the day's battles. And here's the thing, you don't have to be an emperor to need this. In fact, you might need it even more. Because unlike Marcus, you don't have an empire of servants to shield you from distractions. You've got work emails, family responsibilities, bills to pay, traffic to navigate. If you don't prepare your mind, the day will swallow you whole. Let me share a story. A few years ago, I was in the middle of a chaotic season. My business was demanding, my relationships felt strained, and every day I woke up already tense. A mentor suggested I try journaling each morning. At first, I resisted. I'm not a writer, I thought.
I don't have time for that. But eventually, I tried it. I opened a notebook, wrote down 3 sentences. What I feared that day, what I wanted to focus on, and one Stoic principle to guide me. That simple practice changed everything. It wasn't about solving all my problems. It was about reminding myself that I had choices, that I could face the day with clarity. So let's break this down. Why journaling? Why does it matter? Reason 1. It clears mental clutter. We wake up with thoughts racing, worries, to-dos, half-formed ideas. Writing them down creates distance. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Journaling helps you see which fears are just imagination. When you put them on paper, they lose their grip. Reason 2. It reinforces intention. Marcus didn't just write about philosophy, he reminded himself daily of who he wanted to be. You can do the same. Write down one intention. Today, I will not be controlled by anger. That single sentence can act like a compass when life tries to pull you off course. Reason 3. It builds gratitude. The Stoics practiced gratitude, not in a cheesy, positive vibes only way, but in a grounded, realistic way. They reminded themselves, life is short, everything is fragile, and what you have today could be gone tomorrow. When you write down what you're grateful for, you see abundance instead of scarcity. And gratitude makes you resilient. Now, let's tie this to modern psychology. Research shows that journaling reduces stress, increases focus, and even strengthens your immune system. Writing engages the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning and problem solving. That means you are literally training your brain to face the day more strategically. So how do you actually do this without turning it into another overwhelming task? Keep it simple. Here's a 3-part Stoic journaling framework you can use tomorrow. Morning reflection. Write down one challenge you expect today and how you'll face it. Example, I may get criticized in today's meeting. I will respond calmly, not defensively. Daily intention.
Choose one guiding principle. Example, patience, or focus, or Marcus's reminder. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Gratitude note. List one thing you're grateful for. Keep it small and real. My morning coffee, the smile my daughter gave me, the chance to start fresh today. That's it. 3 lines, less than 5 minutes. No pressure to be profound, no pressure to be perfect, just clarity. And here's the beauty. Journaling is cumulative. You may not notice much after one day, but after a week, you'll feel lighter. After a month, you'll see patterns, where you're stuck, what you value most, where you keep tripping. And after a year, you'll look back and see growth. You'll see how you've trained your mind like a muscle. Let me give you an example from history.
James Stockdale, an American pilot shot down during the Vietnam War, was imprisoned for over 7 years. He credited Stoic philosophy, particularly Epictetus, with helping him survive. He didn't have a physical journal in his cell, but he journaled in his mind every day, repeating Stoic principles, reminding himself of what was in his control. He later said that Stoicism saved his life. That's the power of reflection. It's a weapon against despair. So let me ask you, what would it look like for you to pick up a pen tomorrow morning and write one line of intention? Could you commit to that? Could you give yourself that gift of clarity? Because here's the truth. If Marcus Aurelius could rule Rome and still find time to journal, you and I can find 5 minutes before the world barges in. It's not about time. It's about priority. And here's where I want to leave you hanging a bit, because the next practice builds directly on this. Reflection and journaling prepare your mind, but the Stoics also believed in preparing your body. They didn't separate the two. They saw the mind and body as partners in resilience, which means once you've grounded your thoughts, the next step is to strengthen your physical vessel. So in the next part, we'll dive into practice 6, movement and resilience training. I'll show you how the Stoics approached the body, why they valued physical strength, and how you can incorporate simple movements into your morning that train not just your muscles, but your mindset. Trust me, this one will surprise you. Practice 6, movement and resilience training. The Stoics were philosophers, yes, but don't make the mistake of thinking they were only minds lost in books. They were warriors, leaders, and citizens who understood that the body is the vessel of the mind. Epictetus said, "The body is a subject for exercise, not for indulgence, for it was not created for comfort, but for resilience." For the Stoics, physical strength wasn't about vanity, it was about freedom. If your body is weak, your choices are limited. If your body is strong and resilient, your mind is freer to focus on virtue. Now, let's bring this into the modern morning. Once you've won the battle with consistency, once you've protected your first hour and reflected through journaling, it's time to engage your body. And here's the truth. You don't need a gym membership or fancy equipment. What you need is movement. Deliberate, intentional, disciplined movement. Think about Marcus Aurelius. He led armies into battle, endured long campaigns, and yet still wrote about discipline, self-control, and caring for the body as a partner in virtue. For him, exercise wasn't about sculpting abs, it was about sharpening resilience. Seneca even warned against overindulgence in luxury foods and comforts, reminding us that physical hardship, fasting, cold water, exercise, keeps the spirit sharp. So how can you practice Stoic movement in your mornings? Step 1, make it simple.
You don't need a 90-minute workout. 5 to 15 minutes of bodyweight exercises, push-ups, squats, planks, or stretching can be enough to signal to yourself, I begin the day with discipline. The Stoics would say, Don't get lost in excuses. The point isn't to impress anyone. It's to master yourself. Step 2. Pair it with intention. This isn't just physical. It's philosophical training. When you do push-ups, remind yourself, I am preparing my body for the challenges of life. When you stretch, remind yourself, I am creating space in my body so I can create space in my mind. Step 3. Embrace discomfort. Epictetus said, difficulties show what men are. When you push through the burn of a plank or the breathlessness of squats, you're training your tolerance for discomfort. That carries into life. If you can endure the small discomfort of morning exercise, you're better prepared for the bigger discomforts, criticism, rejection, failure, that life will throw at you. Let me give you a story. A client of mine once told me he hated mornings because he felt sluggish and unmotivated. I suggested he try a Stoic-inspired practice, 10 push-ups as soon as he got out of bed. Just 10. At first, he laughed. That won't change anything. But within a week, he noticed something. The push-ups weren't just about exercise. They were about identity. Each morning, he proved to himself he was disciplined. That one act set the tone for the day. Within a month, he was adding short walks, then journaling, then healthier breakfasts. Small movements created momentum. And here's what modern science says. Movement in the morning increases dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins, chemicals that elevate your mood, focus, and resilience. It literally rewires your brain to face stress more calmly. Exercise is not just physical, it's neurological training. The Stoics didn't have neuroscience, but they observed the same truth. Hardship strengthens the soul. Now, let's bring in an ancient Stoic practice, voluntary hardship. Seneca often took cold baths to toughen himself. Epictetus advised practicing with less, so you'd be ready for loss. In our context, this could mean ending your shower with 30 seconds of cold water, or doing a workout without music, embracing the silence. These small hardships remind you, I don't need comfort to thrive. That mindset is priceless in a world that constantly sells you comfort. But here's the key, don't overdo it. The Stoics didn't glorify suffering for its own sake. They practiced balance. Movement and resilience training are meant to sharpen you, not exhaust you. Marcus still needed energy to govern Rome. You still need energy for work, family, and life. So keep it sustainable. Let me give you a challenge. Tomorrow morning, do one deliberate physical act. It could be 10 push-ups, a 2-minute plank, or a 5-minute walk outside. As you do it, don't just think, I'm exercising. Think, I'm training resilience.
I'm reminding myself that I can endure, that I am stronger than I think. That's the Stoic way. And here's the curiosity gap, because once you've engaged the body, once you've strengthened your physical resilience, the question becomes, how do you align your energy with your higher purpose? It's one thing to move, it's another thing to direct that movement toward meaning. And that's where the Stoics lead us next, with the practice of ikigai and purpose alignment. In the next section, I'll show you how to connect your mornings not just to discipline, but to the deeper why that makes getting out of bed exciting. It's the bridge between Stoic virtue and modern fulfillment, and it might just be the missing link in your routine. So stay with me
Because if you've ever felt like mornings were empty or just about going through the motions, this next practice will show you how to infuse them with meaning that lasts. Practice 7. Ikigai and purpose alignment. Let's imagine something for a moment. Tomorrow morning, you wake up before the alarm. You sit up, stretch, and instead of groaning about the day ahead, you feel a pull, like the day is inviting you. Not because it'll be easy, not because everything will go your way, but because you know your why. You know the reason you're getting out of bed. The Japanese call this ikigai, your reason for being, the point where your passions, your talents, what the world needs, and what you can be rewarded for all intersect. The Stoics didn't use the word ikigai, but they lived the idea. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being." That's purpose alignment. He wasn't waking up for comfort. He was waking up for duty, for contribution, for meaning. Here's the truth. Without a deeper reason to wake up, no amount of coffee, push-ups, or journaling will sustain you. Discipline without purpose feels like punishment. Discipline with purpose feels like liberation. Let me share a story. A man I know worked in a job that paid well but drained him. Every morning he dragged himself out of bed, scrolling social media just to delay the inevitable. When he discovered Ikigai, he started asking, what am I passionate about? What am I good at? What does the world need? And what can I be paid for? Slowly, he realized his work could align with mentoring others, something he loved and excelled at. Within months, his mornings changed. He wasn't just waking up to earn a paycheck. He was waking up to live his purpose. That's the shift Stoicism invites us into. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Wasting mornings is wasting life. But when you tie your mornings to purpose, every hour becomes sacred. So how do you find and align with your Ikigai? Let's break it into 3 Stoic-inspired steps. Step 1. Ask the hard questions. Each morning, reflect what matters most to me.
What kind of person do I want to be today? These aren't abstract, they're anchors. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily of the kind of man he wanted to be. Not selfish, not distracted, not angry. What if you wrote your own version each morning? Step 2. Align small actions with big purpose. Ikigai isn't about discovering one grand mission overnight. It's about aligning daily habits with deeper meaning. If your purpose is to serve, maybe it starts with writing a kind message. If your purpose is growth, maybe it starts with reading 1 page. Small acts, when tied to big values, create a purposeful life. Step 3. Revisit and refine. Your purpose isn't static. Marcus Aurelius refined his philosophy daily in his journal. Seneca reminded himself that wealth, health, and comfort come and go, but virtue is constant. Your Ikigai will evolve. That's not weakness, that's growth. Each morning, check in. Am I still aligned with what matters? Now, let's bring in modern psychology. Studies show that people with a strong sense of purpose live longer, recover faster from illness, and report higher happiness even when facing hardship. Why? Because meaning transforms suffering. The Stoics knew this long before science confirmed it. They believed that when you have a why, you can endure almost any how. Here's a simple practice for tomorrow morning. Before you check your phone, ask yourself, if this were my last day, would I be proud of how I'm spending it? Not in a morbid way, but in a liberating way. Memento mori, the reminder of mortality, sharpens your focus. It strips away the trivial and highlights the essential. Let me give you a real-life example. Viktor Frankl,
a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote that those who survived the camps weren't the strongest, but those who had purpose. He said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." That's Stoicism in action, purpose as resilience. And here's something practical. Write down one sentence each morning that connects you to your purpose. Today, I live with courage. Today, I contribute to others. Today, I seek wisdom. It doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be real. That sentence becomes the lens through which you see the day. But let me be clear. Finding ikigai isn't about overnight transformation. It's about gentle unfolding. Marcus didn't wake up one day and write a perfect philosophy. He wrote and rewrote his reminders day after day. You don't have to figure out your entire life purpose tomorrow. You just need to ask, what's one thing I can do today that aligns with my deeper values? Then do it. And here's where the Stoic perspective elevates this idea. They remind us that our purpose isn't just about ourselves. It's about the larger human story. Marcus wrote, "What is not good for the hive is not good for the bee." Your purpose isn't isolated. It's woven into community, service, contribution. When your mornings align with something greater than yourself, you tap into a deeper strength.
So, tomorrow morning, when you wake up, don't just think about what you have to do. Think about why it matters. Tie even the smallest act to your larger purpose. That's ikigai. That's Stoicism. That's how mornings become meaningful. And here's your teaser for what's next. Once you've anchored yourself in purpose, the next challenge is managing the storm of emotions that come with daily life. The Stoics didn't ignore emotions, they mastered them. In the next practice, we'll explore how to start your mornings with emotional regulation and calm, so that no matter what chaos the day brings, you remain steady. This, my friend, is where mornings go from purposeful to unshakable. Practice 8. Emotional regulation and calm. Let's be real. Some mornings, you wake up already tense. Maybe you had a restless night. Maybe your mind is racing with worries. Maybe yesterday's frustrations are still echoing in your chest. And before you've even had your coffee, you feel like you're already losing. The Stoics knew this feeling well. Marcus Aurelius began many of his journal entries by preparing himself for difficult people and stressful situations. Today, you will meet with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. Notice what he was doing. He wasn't pretending the world would be perfect. He was preparing his mind so he could meet the world with calm. The key lesson here is calm doesn't come from the absence of stress. It comes from training your response to it. And the best time to train that response is in the morning, before the world hits you with its noise. Now, let me share a story. A friend of mine once told me that every morning his commute filled him with rage. Traffic lights, slow drivers, the same frustrations day after day. One morning, he decided to try a Stoic-inspired practice. Before starting the car, he sat for 2 minutes, closed his eyes, and reminded himself, "I cannot control traffic, but I can control my response." That morning, the same annoyances showed up, but his reaction was different. He wasn't calmer because traffic disappeared. He was calmer because he chose his response. That's emotional regulation in action. So, how do we build this into our mornings? Let's explore 3 Stoic practices. 1. Negative visualization. The Stoics often imagined challenges before they happened. Epictetus taught, when you kiss your child, say to yourself, "Tomorrow they may die." Harsh? Yes, but the point wasn't to be morbid. It was to prepare the mind to meet difficulties. When you imagine difficulties in advance, traffic, criticism, setbacks, you're less shocked when they happen. In the morning, take 1 minute to anticipate a challenge you may face and imagine yourself meeting it calmly. 2. Breath as anchor. Seneca wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." One way to separate imagination from reality is through breathing.
When you wake up tense, your body is often in fight or flight mode. Slow, deliberate breathing tells your nervous system you are safe. Try this. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 6. Do that 3 times. You'll feel the shift immediately. 3. Mantras for the mind. Marcus Aurelius used simple reminders, short sentences that brought him back to calm. You can do the same. In the morning, repeat one Stoic phrase, "I control my mind, not the world," or "Obstacles are opportunities." Write it down. Say it out loud. Let it be the soundtrack of your morning. And here's where modern psychology backs this up. Studies on mindfulness and cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, show that anticipating triggers, focusing on the breath, and using self-talk reduce stress and increase emotional resilience. These are not new inventions. CBT is practically Stoicism reborn for the modern age. Let's put this into a routine you can try tomorrow. Step 1. As soon as you wake, before reaching for your phone, sit up and take 3 slow breaths. Step 2. Write down one challenge you expect today. Example, my boss might criticize my report. Then write how you want to respond. I will listen calmly without defensiveness. Step 3. Choose a Stoic mantra for the day. Say it out loud. Example, I am the master of my reactions. This takes less than 5 minutes, but it sets an emotional foundation for the entire day. Now let's expand this to the bigger Stoic picture. The Stoics didn't say emotions are bad. They said emotions are signals. Anger shows up when something feels unjust. Fear shows up when something feels uncertain. Grief shows up when something is lost. The mistake is letting those emotions control you. The practice is learning to notice them, accept them, and choose your response. Imagine waking up tomorrow, and instead of being dragged by your emotions, you greet them like visitors. Ah, anxiety, I see you. You may stay, but you won't drive today. That's Stoicism. That's emotional freedom. Let me give you another historical example. Admiral James Stockdale, whom we mentioned earlier, survived years as a prisoner of war. He credited Epictetus with saving his mind. He said, "You have to understand that you are not in control of your external circumstances, but you can control your internal constitution, your reactions." Every morning, he grounded himself with this truth. Even in captivity, he remained free in his mind. Now compare that to your life. You may not be in a prison camp, but you face emotional challenges daily. Emails that frustrate you, people who annoy you, situations that overwhelm you. The difference between being enslaved by those emotions and being free is what you choose each morning. So tomorrow, don't just prepare your schedule, prepare your emotional state. Begin with calm, anchor yourself with breath, and carry a Stoic mantra into your day.
And here's the twist I want to leave you with. Emotional regulation is powerful, but it's not the end. The Stoics didn't just want calm for the sake of calm. They wanted to direct that calm toward action, toward living a life of virtue, service, and meaning. Which brings us to the next practice, service and contribution.
Because once you've aligned with purpose and steadied your emotions, the question becomes, how do you use your mornings to serve something greater than yourself? That's where true fulfillment lies. So stay with me, because in the next section, I'll show you how the Stoics connected their mornings not just to self-mastery, but to contribution. And when you make that shift, your mornings stop being about survival and start being about legacy. Practice 9. Service and contribution. Let me ask you a question. When you wake up in the morning, who are you waking up for? Yourself alone or something larger? Because here's the truth. The Stoics never believed life was just about the self. They believed each of us is a part of a greater whole. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What is not good for the hive is not good for the bee." You and I, we are the bees. And the hive, that's our family, our community, our society, humanity itself. Think about that for a moment. If you only wake up for yourself, motivation comes and goes. But when you wake up for others, when you see your mornings as preparation not just for your own gain, but for service, the energy is different. It's deeper. It's steadier. Now, service doesn't mean you need to donate millions or volunteer 8 hours a day. It can be much smaller and simpler. In fact, the Stoics taught that the smallest acts of service, done consistently, shape a life of virtue. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, do not waste what remains of your life in speculation about others. Instead, direct your efforts to what nature demands of you, to contribute to the good of others. So how can you infuse your mornings with service and contribution? Let's explore 3 Stoic-inspired practices. 1. Begin with gratitude for relationships. Instead of just listing things you're thankful for, think about people. Who has impacted your life? Who do you get to serve today? Write down one person's name in your journal and ask, how can I show up for them today? This small shift reframes your morning from me to we. 2. Dedicate your efforts. When you sit down to work, don't just think, I need to get this done. Instead, dedicate it to someone. This report I'm writing, it's to make life easier for my team. This workout I'm doing, it's so I can be strong for my family. Purpose turns ordinary acts into acts of service. 3. Practice microservice. Before leaving the house, or even before opening your laptop, do one act of kindness. Send a quick message of encouragement. Make coffee for someone else. Even a smile at a stranger.
Seneca said, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." Your morning is filled with those opportunities if you're paying attention. Let me share a story. A woman I coached used to dread her mornings. She lived alone, worked remotely, and felt her days had no meaning. I challenged her to try one act of microservice each morning. Sometimes she sent a thank you note. Sometimes she checked in on a friend. Sometimes she donated $5 anonymously online. Within weeks, she told me her mornings felt different. She said, I don't feel alone anymore because I know I'm connected. That's the Stoic truth. Service connects us to the larger web of life. And here's where modern science aligns again. Studies show that people who engage in daily acts of kindness have lower stress, higher happiness, and stronger immune systems. Serving others isn't just noble, it's practical. It makes you resilient. Now, let's take this further. The Stoics weren't naive. They knew service wasn't always easy. Sometimes people are ungrateful. Sometimes your efforts aren't noticed. Marcus himself wrote, "Expect to meet meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial men." But he didn't use that as an excuse to withdraw. Instead, he reminded himself, we are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of the upper and lower teeth. In other words, service is our nature. We do it not because others always deserve it, but because it makes us who we are. So tomorrow morning, try this.
Before you dive into your to-do list, ask yourself one question. Who can I serve today? Write down one name. Decide on one action. Then do it. It might be your spouse, your colleague, a neighbor, or even yourself. Because serving yourself with discipline and care equips you to serve others better. And here's the twist. Service doesn't just benefit others. It transforms you. When you make contribution a daily practice, self-pity has less room to grow. Complaints feel smaller. Resentments fade faster. Because your focus shifts outward, and with it, your strength expands. Let me give you a modern example. Consider someone like Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers. Every day, his morning routine wasn't about fame or success, it was about service. His simple television program reached millions with messages of kindness, patience, and acceptance. He once said, "The thing I remember best about successful people I've met is their obvious delight in what they're doing, and it seems to have very little to do with worldly success. They just love what they're doing, and they love it in such a way that they can be of service to others." That's Ikigai plus Stoicism plus service, all rolled into one. So let me ask you, how would your mornings change if you saw them as preparation not just for surviving the day, but for serving the world?
Even if the world never applauds, even if no one notices, what if you lived like Marcus, doing your duty, contributing your small part to the hive? Because here's the ultimate Stoic insight. Service is not optional. It's who we are. When you live in line with that, mornings stop being a chore. They become a calling. Now, here's where we go next. Service is powerful, but the Stoics remind us that life is fleeting. Tomorrow isn't guaranteed, which means the true urgency isn't just to serve, but to live with the awareness that each morning could be your last. That awareness, memento mori, is what makes your mornings not just meaningful, but precious. So in the next part, we'll dive into practice 10, memento mori and living fully. It's the ultimate Stoic secret to mornings that aren't just productive, but deeply alive. Practice 10, memento mori and living fully. Let me begin with a jarring truth. One day, you will wake up for the last time. One morning, the alarm will ring, the sun will rise, and it will be your final opportunity to live, to love, to contribute. You don't know when that day will be, and neither do I. But the Stoics told us, don't ignore this truth, embrace it. Memento mori. Remember you must die. Not as a dark obsession, but as a bright reminder. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He didn't write those words to depress himself. He wrote them to sharpen his focus, to strip away the trivial, to remind himself that life is too short to waste on pettiness, distraction, or fear. Think about your own mornings. How many of them have been swallowed by anxiety about things that didn't matter a week later? How many have been wasted in distraction, scrolling endlessly, numbing yourself before the day even begins? When you remember mortality, suddenly those choices feel foolish. Every morning becomes precious. Every breath becomes a gift. Let me share a personal story. A close friend of mine lost his father, unexpectedly. The next morning he told me, "I'll never see mornings the same again. Each one feels like a blessing, not a burden." That's the shift memento mori creates. It wakes you up, not just physically, but spiritually. So how do we bring this into practice? Step 1. Morning reflection. When you wake up, remind yourself, this could be my last day. How do I want to live it? This isn't meant to paralyze you. It's meant to energize you. Suddenly, small annoyances lose their power. That traffic jam? Insignificant. That rude comment? Forgettable. What matters is how you live, how you love, how you serve today. Step 2. Evening gratitude. The Stoics paired memento mori with gratitude. Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. Before bed, reflect. If this were my last day, what am I grateful I experienced? What am I proud I chose?"
That reflection makes each morning sweeter because you wake with no regrets from the day before. Step 3. Direct your actions. Memento mori isn't just about thoughts, it's about action. If this were your last day, would you waste it in gossip, or would you build something meaningful? Would you snap at your loved ones, or would you embrace them? Would you complain, or would you create? Each morning, let this truth direct your choices. Now, modern psychology again confirms what the Stoics knew. Research shows that people who contemplate mortality live more intentionally. They focus more on relationships, less on materialism. They savor the present rather than delaying joy. They take risks aligned with their values because they know time is short. And here's the paradox. When you remember death each morning, you actually live more fully. You stop putting off joy. You stop waiting for someday. You start saying yes to life today. Let me give you a historical example. Marcus Aurelius lost many children in infancy. Imagine the grief. And yet, he wrote again and again about treasuring the present moment, about remembering how fragile life is. Instead of making him bitter, it made him tender, grateful, alive. His philosophy wasn't abstract. It was forged in loss, in the awareness that tomorrow isn't promised. So tomorrow morning, when you open your eyes, whisper to yourself, "This day is a gift. I don't know how many more I'll get, but I know I have this one. How will I live it?" That question alone can change everything. And here's the ultimate Stoic insight. When you live with memento mori, you don't fear death. You honor life. You don't waste time. You redeem it. You don't obsess over control. You focus on virtue. Every morning becomes a rehearsal for living well. Now, let's tie this back to everything we've explored together. You began by claiming your mind before the world could take it. You practiced consistency over comfort, proving you're in control of yourself. You stacked small wins, building momentum for the day. You protected your first hour like sacred ground. You reflected and journaled to anchor your mind. You trained your body for resilience. You aligned with your purpose, your ikigai. You steadied your emotions, learning to respond with calm. You embraced service, making your mornings about contribution, not just consumption. And finally, you embraced memento mori, turning each morning into a precious chance to live fully. This is the Stoic morning routine, not a list of hacks, but a way of living. Not perfection, but intention. Not chasing productivity, but cultivating virtue. So tomorrow, don't just wake up like a Stoic. Rise with discipline, move with purpose, serve with love, and live with the awareness that this day, this morning, is a gift. And if you found this journey meaningful, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, practice it, and remember, resilience isn't born, it's built, one morning at a time. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." That's the essence of Stoic mornings. And that, my friend, is how you live a life worth remembering.